I think this film is so cleverly nuanced. It's one of those that when you do rewatch again, you go, oh my God, that was there, and this was there.
I got sucked in once again to this, I would say, absolute classic of our times.
This film's almost a bit like a gateway to European cinema. Like if you kind of enjoyed this and you enjoyed kind of watching actors that you know in a beautiful surrounding have these relationships that are kind of sometimes fleeting, sometimes intense, you might like European cinema. Why don't you try that? Hello everyone, joining Flixwatcher today we have Linton.
Hi.
Bertie.
Hello.
And as always, Kobe.
Hello.
And we're here to talk about Call Me By Your Name. Thank you as always to the mighty people for the mighty, mighty tunes. And thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills.
Please do remember to write a review and rate us on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you can do where you listen to the podcast, because it really does help us.
And you can join in the conversation with us on Twitter
at FlixWatcherPod and on Instagram
at Flixwatcher. Hello film fans, welcome to Flixwatcher Podcast. Our guests today are Linton and Bertie. Over to you please, Bertie, to say hello to our listeners and tell them a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please.
Hi listeners, my name's Bertie and I'm part of the directing duo Bert and Bertie. We've made a number of films and TV projects over the last 16 years now. You may have watched Troop Zero, which was our second feature film, some episodes of The Great, which is an amazing show, Our Flag Means Death very recently, and we're just finishing up with Apple on a couple of shows. One's a sci-fi, and then later next year there's going to be a Brie Larson show coming out. So busy girls.
You completely missed out one of the biggest ones, being Hawkeye. Parts of the
cinematic. That little thing. That tiny thing we did during COVID. Yeah, so we shot half of the show Hawkeye with Jeremy Renner.
And Haley Steinfeld.
Haley Steinfeld as well, playing Kate Bishop.
Your Hawkeye has one of the best action sequences I've seen in films, which is you guys directed, I'm sure, with the car, which kind of... there's some amazing car scenes in films. One of my favourites was in The Raid 2, where the kind of car kind of detaches and reattaches just to get the camera around. But it looked like yours was taking that kind of idea to the infinity level on that. Can you explain how that was shot and how that was done? Because I thought it was stunning.
Thank you. That was a huge, it didn't take that long to shoot, but it took a long time to rehearse and develop. So I think that was after watching, there was an indie film, an American film called Waves a couple of years back. Don't know whether you saw it. And it opened in a wonderful shot which did a 360 in the car when just the two teenage kind of boyfriend and girlfriend were driving along a bridge. And so it really was kind of a scenic and very slow, poetic move, which was just about freedom and their relationship and just a beautiful intro to the movie. But I was like, oh my God, imagine if it was a car chase and there were things coming at this there we just choreograph it. So this constantly rotating camera catches all the dialogue. And there was, there was a car chase in episode 103, the third episode of Hawkeye. And so we thought, let's at least start it with this, because there's this wonderful bickering relationship that, Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye and Kate Bishop has.
Yeah.
And so they're like bickering and shouting at each other, and he's lost his hearing, so he can't hear her very well. And it's all very chaotic. And then the tracksuit mafia are like on, in vans and cars and colliding into them, and they're going off. And so we just choreographed it. So this 360 camera just never stopped turning. And, it was so fun, but we had to like test different systems for it. And one system, we tried handheld, we tried the way that Waves did it, where they just had a very kind of calm camera on one axis. And then what we eventually went with was this system that was like somewhere between handheld and on the actual the camera mount. Yeah. And we got loads of bungee cables, like literal bungee cables, and the grips kind of created this system where the camera was just kind of suspended and rocked a little bit, but then turned 360 as well. So that was so much fun to develop. Sorry, you shouldn't ask me questions like that because I will not stop talking.
No, it's
fascinating.
Good. Absolutely, yeah. Linton, who are you?
I kind of don't want to follow that now. It's not as interesting as a rotating camera scene in Hawkeye, is it? I'm a classically trained bassoonist. I work for professional orchestras in London, but I also host BBC's Classical Fix podcast, which is a podcast for people who don't usually listen to classical music, actually. So if you've never engaged in it, or if you're worried about listening to classical music, this is the podcast for you, because I send a playlist of 6 pieces to guests, and we literally just talk about what they like and what they didn't like, and kind of try and break down those barriers of stuffiness that come with classical music, and just kind of present it as just something really cool to listen to, guaranteed you'll find something you love as well.
How much does film score? How much you take notice of film score? Is it a bit like a busman's holiday when you go to the cinema or listen to music, or is it?
Oh, massively. Like film score is a huge thing, isn't it? I mean, I think that the time you notice it most is when there is no film score. I think Alien, the first one, is pretty notable for that. I remember studying that in my film score class when I was at uni. I think I don't know whether it's like the first. There's a good chunk of the film, either the first kind of couple of minutes or something without music, and it works so atmospherically in that sense. But you notice it. That's the thing you notice, is that it's just devoid of music, and it's a really bold move to do that in music, because music in a film, because I think music adds so much to a scene. Music can tell you, it can really dictate how you are supposed to feel, whether it's an emotional state or a state of anxiety. Music can add to so much to what you're seeing.
I was going to ask, is there like one particular track that you can just about recommend to anyone and you can just know that's the one?
I mean, I can recommend a track. I don't know if it'll be the one for everyone, but Kobe, you talked about it. You've talked about in another podcast that we've done about Lou. You talked about Holst's The Planet. Jupiter from that suite is such an amazing piece. You'll have probably heard it before. You'll have heard it on an advert or somewhere else, but for me, it's a really life-affirming piece, that one. I challenge anybody not to feel some kind of joy from listening to that. And you might recognise it as well. There's a chunk in the middle section which is often sung at rugby matches. Yeah. But it's got everything. It's got joy, it's got humour, and it's got emotion as well. So that's the one I would recommend to go and listen to.
Also, Ride of the Valkyries is a good one to cheer you up.
Classic.
So, Linton, you chose the film for today, Call Me By Your Name. Can you tell us, first of all, why you chose it? And then second of all, you'll have 60 seconds to give us the synopsis.
Sure. So I'll tell you why I chose it. I've always been sceptical of the LGBTQ films as a genre, because I hated the fact that maybe it's some kind of, well, it almost definitely is some kind of internalized homophobia. I'm LGBTQ, I'm gay myself, but I always hated seeing it on screen because it wasn't ever treated as a normal thing. The gayness was the story, and that always bothered me, because often as well what came along with that was low budgets, not very good storylines, not very good acting, and so it always, LGBTQ films felt second rate to me. With Call Me By Your Name, I think this is a departure from that. It's not the first film that does it, but it's a real departure from that. And even though the love story is this LGBTQ story, I'll talk about it later, but that relationship between, I think it's Ali and Elio, isn't even the most important relationship to me in that film. And so that's why I love it. It's multifaceted.
Okay, and your 60-second synopsis time starts now.
So it's 1983, and Elio is a 17-year-old. He's the son of a professor and the film is set in Italy. And every summer, his parents have students come and help them with their paperwork. The summer that we are seeing, 1983, this American 24-year-old comes across, and a love story blossoms between the two of them, and that's it.
Nice.
Short and sweet.
I don't know where to start with this film. First of all, I think this might be a high scorer for Flixwatcher. I'm going to go to yourself, Bertie. Tell me about this film. Tell me about this film from your point of view. Any high level thoughts you just want to share with people?
Well, I remember watching this when it first came out in 2017, and it's when you're a BAFTA member, you kind of get these screeners through, and so you're kind of frantically trying to watch all of the movies. And I just remember also not having an incredible experience watching LGBTQ movies up to, I do have to say Brokeback Mountain broke my heart and is one of a classic film for all generations and time. And it's a true classic romance love story, as is Call Me By Your Name. It was definitely my favourite film of that year. And on rewatching it for this podcast, again, I was saying to Kobe, I was like, I don't have time to watch these films. And he's like, look, if you've seen it, just refresh yourself on some of the key scenes. And so I opened up Netflix and I started to go through, and I was like, I'll just skip to that one. And then I just started watching it again.
That's how they get you.
And it was midnight. And I just get sucked in every time. It's just so beautiful, and get sucked into not just because it's not that heavy in dialogue. It's the landscape, and it's Italy, and it's the silent moments of characters, and he does this so well. Luca
Guadagnino.
Yeah. He really. I mean, he always kind of paints these wildly unrealistic families with these affluent lifestyles, and they're all terribly erudite and they're all terribly wealthy, but also wholesome, and they live off the land, or, it's beautiful to watch. It's aspirational, but the characters are so oddly real. We know odd, real people and that's what I always get from watching his A Bigger Splash, I Am Love. You get odd, twisted stories and relationships, but there's such a joie de vivre, there's such a joy for living beneath it all. So anyway, I'm rambling now. I got sucked in once again to this, I would say, absolute classic of our times.
Helen?
So I didn't see this immediately when it came out, so I caught maybe the end of the year, and I was so excited to see it, and then I watched it and thought, it's good. I kind of enjoyed it, but I don't know, I felt that I have not loved it as much as everyone else, which was a bit weird, because on paper it kind of feels like a film that I should love, and there's loads of moments that I really love, and I think Timothée Chalamet is wonderful in it. I think he manages to be really funny and really heartbreaking and just really inquisitive about so many things about life. And I just think it's a really, really wonderful performance from him. But I don't know. I think maybe this time around, definitely, I'm just not sure about Armie Hammer in this. I wasn't convinced by him the first time I saw it, and I'm even less convinced by him. I don't know, maybe it's something about the way he eats his eggs. There's just something wrong about that. I just didn't buy him.
The first time he had the egg, I was like, what old
is he
are you?
doing? A beautiful soft-boiled egg, and he loses all that wonderful yolk, and then he now knows that the lovely chef lady cooks them like that, and he still eats them wrong.
I love that this is what you're focusing on. You go to the important details.
So sorry,
I appreciate that.
I think everyone else is perfect, and there's just something, I'm not sure, maybe that is his character. He's meant to be you're not meant to like him, because he obviously, spoilers, decides that he's going to get married at the end and break his heart in a really sad way. I don't know.
I think I saw this as when it came out, part of London Film Festival, and I didn't know anything about the film. Lots of people saying, "Go and watch Call Me by Your Name," so I was like, "I'll go and watch it." And it was the end of a long day, and I was a bit knackered, but I was kind of blown away by the scenery and what's going on. So much so that I didn't see the story developing. I didn't know it was an LGBTQ story. I just thought, oh, this is quite a cool 80s set story. I thought those guys were having a go at each other, and when I left it, I was like, well, I mean, that was all right, wasn't it? But on rewatch, I was like, holy shit, this is fucking stunning. Like every single shot, I think is magnificent. There's lots of long shots. There's lots of long scenes, which didn't strike me the first time. And in particular, there's that one scene where Timothée Chalamet is playing piano, for example, and that goes on for like 5 minutes. And this guy is not a classical trained pianist. I might defer to yourself, Linton, for the kind of difficulty of what he's playing, but it still seemed like he played this one piece in 3 different styles. Armie Hammer's having a go at him, Oliver's having a go at him while it's doing, and he's winding him up. And that's just one of these kind of scenes where it just kind of plays out for 5 minutes. And there's the space, there's the tension, and then of course I was like, when I watched it the first time, like I said, I didn't see it going to be a gay love story, and then I was like, on the second watch, I was like, oh yes, they're from like almost from the start. It's kind of baked into the storyline. So I think it's stunning. I didn't see the fact that that Oliver got married. I thought it was almost inevitable. With no idea where Elio's ended up. He might have ended up in a relationship with a woman afterwards as well. I think part of it is they're both themselves, and there was this relationship that blossomed. Maybe they're pansexual. Maybe they enjoyed each other at the time, and that was it. So I don't think it needs to be fully defined there. But Armie Hammer, Oliver went on and found a new love. It could have been a man, it could have been a woman, it could have been anywhere in between. And that was always going to break Elio's heart anyway. I also love the supporting cast in here. The main thing I took away from this, one of the main things I took away from the second one, is how much I love Michael Stuhlbarg, and his monologue at the end almost makes me cry. Like, and that's the scene I've watched on YouTube, and their relationship that Elio has with his mum and dad, I think, is absolutely divine. But I've granted enough there, Linton.
I think that's exactly it. I think this film is so cleverly nuanced. It's one of those that when you do rewatch again, you go, oh my God, that was there, and this was there. Like, and being a musician, you were asking about, do I tune into the soundtrack? The soundtrack for this is incredibly clever. It's all solo piano music, apart from when you get one or two pop songs. And that's a very daring thing to do. There's no cinematic soundscape to this. It's just solo piano in each of these scenes, which I think reflects this character of Elio all the way through. Elio is your protagonist, and that's kind of driven home. That's reinforced by the fact that Elio is a pianist, and it's driven home by your score is a solo piano all the way through, playing all these. Sometimes I definitely heard some Ravel in there, but there's some other stuff as well, maybe that was written especially for the soundtrack. But I think that's very clever. But yeah, you were talking about that monologue at the end the dad does. That is the relationship that I thought was the most amazing thing. I mean, this is 1983. I grew up as a little gay boy in the 90s, and coming out was a big thing. Most parents don't accept it. So seeing how their household was so open, so accepting, they knew that thing was going on, and the monologue he gives about how lucky you are to find that person, and this idea of, if you're sad, be sad, feel those feelings, because this is the most human. Like that monologue, I was like, that is the most important relationship to me, and it's always on the fringe. It never comes into the spotlight until that 5-minute moment right at the end. And the reason I think that is the most amazing and important relationship is because that attitude that the father has, that both the parents have, although he says the mother didn't know, that attitude that the father has that allows. Because I don't think Elio is a relatable character to me, even as a gay man at all, in the fact that he's grown up in this privilege and wealth. However, he is all those little eccentricities we all do, the things we do behind closed doors and stuff like that. I'm not saying that I've done any of the stuff that Elio does on camera, by the way. Just
so a peach confession coming up.
Caveat there, sorry. But the fact that the father encourages that relationship is something that I, as a gay man growing up, and probably so many others, longed for. That environment where you are not only encouraged to be yourself, but to feel and to and the closing scene as well, where the titles start coming up, where he's just crying to the fireplace. I thought, God, we've all had that first love, and where
16, 17-year-old, and something breaks down,
and then everywhere you go that you went with this person, there are these invisible remnants that remind you of them and pull you. Maybe I was just a very overly emotional teenager, but pull you into tears. There's so much nuance. It's so incredibly relatable, I think.
And I just want to say, because so often I think cinema shows humans getting it wrong. And I think this was part of like growing up as a young filmmaker in Britain. It was like that. And don't get me wrong, beautiful films made by these British filmmakers, but it was about the drunk father or the abusive father or the family where, you've got a child who's struggling to fight their way out of it. And so often powerful cinema, and I'm doing bunny ears, is where we portray images of people getting it wrong. But really powerful cinema is painting a picture of how to get it right. And it's making me a bit emotional when you're talking, because it's like, I often think that there really should be more hope in cinema, and the cinema that we celebrate, and that relationship, and almost more powerful for the fact that we don't see it coming. It's kind of peppered in. And this is where we get into our second viewing scores or repeat viewing.
It was there all along.
You see that, you see it building and growing. And then it's like, no one sees it coming until afterwards. That's powerful, hopeful cinema.
And I think,
there's that bit when Elio's sniffing his swimming shorts. I don't know what I thought was happening at that scene the first time. Maybe I was just like tired. I was like, he's definitely into this guy.
Yeah, Toby, can I just interject? When you say on your first viewing of this film, you're saying you didn't realise it was a gay love story. Like, you finished the film and you did not realise it was a gay love story.
But that's the incredible thing about it. It's not like the story is everything else that allows that gay love story to happen.
Yeah.
That is the beauty. That is the cleverness of this. And that's why I think that the father-son relationship is so important, because it's on the periphery until that last 5 minutes, and he is the person, the household, the family, that loving environment was the thing that allowed that to happen.
I mean, it's a film really that's kind of celebrating art and beauty and love, and then there's several relationships that are sort of spurned on by the beauty that people find in it. It's like almost, this film's almost a bit like a gateway to European cinema. Like, if you kind of enjoyed this and you enjoyed kind of watching actors that you know in a beautiful surrounding have these relationships that are kind of sometimes fleeting, sometimes intense, sometimes kind of spontaneous, then you might like European cinema. Why don't you try that? So it feels a little bit like
somewhere
that.
But
in
ultimately,
it is what actually happens is just kind of like a by thing, and when at its heart, it is art and beauty and love, because the reason he's there is to find his sculptures, and they feature, and there's shots of those, and you see them sort of in and out, and that's all classical beauty, and discovering these beautiful things that have been hidden or away in the sea, and bringing them back, and in allowing other people to enjoy them and see them and feel what that person felt when they made them. So it's all about love.
It's that what I thought is what was really beautiful is I felt really fortunate to have that snapshot that, you were talking about hope, Bertie, seeing this roller coaster of emotions that Elio goes on, and knowing he's going to be okay, knowing that he's going to be supported, knowing I don't know what happens afterwards, you know, and the closing scenes are him crying, but you kind of think this is the breadth of humanity, and I've been fortunate to have a little window into that.
What do you make of one thing I'm always jealous about is people just flitting in and out of different languages, and that gives insight as to the kind of the nature of the household and stuff like that as well, doesn't it? And the support kind of structure and the affluence, I guess, and the privilege that they have. But yeah, I don't know. Is that just me that kind of felt impressed by that?
That's
and
also
resonated with that?
Classic Guadagnino, where you just feel ridiculously stupid for only maybe speaking 1.5 languages, because everyone else seems to be quadruplet, you know, lingual.
When Oliver was trying to say, I'm going to be late for dinner, in Italian, it's like, oh, Oliver, what are you doing, mate?
Sorry, come on. No, I was just going to say, once again, it's that super aspirational. And I feel like on one level, these families are so unrelatable, because like how many of us spend our summers in Italy kind of like whiling away, notating music and learning how to play 5 different versions of one classical. Well, actually, you do, Linton. I don't know whether it's in Italy. But also, I kind of enjoy it. I enjoy watching this window into another, where I do feel, even though they might not be relatable in situation, the characters are somehow open and relatable. So I love them showing off their different language skills. I really did. And it didn't bump for me. I love reading a subtitle here or there and then coming back to a bit of English.
I think the fact that Elio does it adds to his precociousness. And
he wants to impress, doesn't he?
But I get the impression that that's his everyday life, and he is that precocious boy who does that and can do that without thinking. But that's why as a gay character, I find him unrelatable. I'm not precocious at all. But that's
not
I present to BBC Radio 3.
But yeah, I think that but also again, it's another little layer, because you have to engage in what they're saying, otherwise you miss it. And it's a clever thing to keep you there, to keep you watching the film. If I'm flitting between, it's not just one language, it's like 2 or 3. So while I'm reading the subtitles, I'm thinking, is that Italian? Is that French? You know, so you're always engaged. It's a clever little...
Yeah. I wanted to ask something, and it was related to this, but it's about relatability. And Linton, when you were saying, as a gay man, you've been kind of like, I don't know, is it a cringy quality to a lot of gay films that you've seen in the past that you couldn't... And I was wondering when watching it, because I feel so blissful watching these love-making scenes, or the kind of like the flirtations, and when it gets physical between them, I feel that feeling of first love over and above anything about them being a same-sex couple. And part of me was wondering at the time, I was like, do I feel not awkward about this because Timothée Chalamet plays the awkwardness of it so well? So he's doing that job for us, which is like embarrassed and scared and ashamed and kind of like throwing himself at Oliver and then kind of backing off again. Like all of that stuff that he's feeling allows me to kind of just enjoy him as a character experiencing this first love. I don't know whether that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think in terms of gay characters, the reason I always kind of shy away from them is because previously the gay character was stereotypically gay, and the sex scenes were stereotypically gay sex scenes, so maybe a bit seedy or something like that, and that's because of the nature of what being gay was in the 90s. It was something to be ashamed of. There's a scene actually where Ollie starts mocking him for what he did with the peach. And that whilst I can't relate to the peach thing, that moment of we were always taught as gay people that gayness is something to be ashamed of, and so that moment of pure unadulterated shame that he's feeling, that makes him just he bursts into tears, doesn't he? That was like, oh my God, like I can so relate to that. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. Like, you weren't on edge because he's going through the spectrum of emotions that we all go through, either with somebody or in private. We are seeing that, and that's also intertwined because it's Elio's story that he's the protagonist. And again, as I said, like that's only emphasized by the fact that our soundtrack is just piano most of the time. It's solely focused on him, so we are very comfortable in his hands in that journey.
Yeah.
There's that first night that they kind of spent together, but leading up to that, you had Elio's writing on the post-it notes, and we've done that, like, to the people we fancy. We're like, oh, should I say this? Or you've started writing that text message, and they see the ellipses coming up maybe, and you discard it, and then you send it, and then you're like, fucking hell, what the hell have I done there? And then, you know, so that build up through to them meeting that night, you see with Elio for the rest of the day, and he's constantly looking at his watch, like every 2 minutes, every 3 minutes, he's looking at his watch, because he's like, the note back from Oliver is like, be a man and see you at midnight, and it's just like, oh, okay, this is going to happen. Something's going to happen here. We're going to, and that kind of stretch, I think that transcends any. That's a young person in love kind of thing. That's a young person infatuated, and I think that stretch particularly was really fascinating and really kind of engaging. And then there's the release of them hooking up, which I think, yeah, fantastic all the way through. Is there anything you guys want to say before we head to the scores? We'll run a bit longer in this, but I think I kind of anticipated it. But anything else we want to say before we start scoring Call Me By Your Name?
So much I want to say, but I think it would just go on for hours then. So
well, let's head to the scores.
Hello, I'm Kate Lever, host of Who's a Good Dog, the podcast for anyone who's ever loved a dog. We're one of the other podcasts in the Stripped Media family. Each episode, I ask a brilliant person to introduce me to their dog and tell me how having a dog has changed their life. Listen to Who's a Good Dog wherever you get your podcasts.
So welcome to the Flixwatcher scores. The scores are always out of 5. You may have decimal places, and we will start with you, please, Linton, with your recommendability.
I'd give this a 4.8.
Why does it lose a 0.2?
I think because it's a very particular genre, and I think you have to be in a very particular mood. It's not you couldn't just sit down. Well, maybe you could and just watch it. I think you have to be prepared to invest in it. It won't grip you straight away. You have to be prepared to invest a little bit.
Bertie?
well, I was gonna just go for a 4.8, and then you asked the question of why not the other 2 points, and I was thinking of, like, I don't know whether I'd recommend it to my dad because my dad's all squeamish about gay movies, and I'm like, no, actually, that is why I'm going to recommend this to my dad. So I'm going to go for a 5 now.
There you go, Dad. Take that 5. Helen.
Is there anyone who hasn't seen this? It feels like everyone's seen this.
Plenty of people haven't seen this.
I feel like everyone's seen this. I really wish I loved this more. And I feel a little bit sad that I don't love it as much as a lot of people, but I still would highly recommend it to a 4.5. It is very art housey, and I think that a few people would be like, oh, it's a bit boring because nothing really happens. There's languages in it, kind of thing. So, yeah, a 4.5. I think it's really strong, and I love seeing gay stories on film, so like more of them. I'm
going to go for 4.5 as well. I think the 0.5 comes off because it is, it's more art housey. You've got the languages there, and it's a romance story, and it's kind of thing whereby one of my favourite films is the favourite films of the Before trilogy, but there's no way I could recommend that just to everyone. And as much as I love those Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy falling in love in the European streets, there's so many people, if I recommend that to, like, what the hell are you doing, Kobe? Why did you tell that to me? So it's for those people who can't, conversational films, where's the guns? Where's the plane blown up kind of thing. So yeah, 4.5. But
what would constitute a 5? Because not every film will have guns or planes thrown up or blowing up, not thrown up, or people gay men kissing in the street. So what could constitute a 5? Because not every genre will fit everybody.
Not at all. So my benchmark for this is Back to the Future. The film I can recommend to anyone. Go watch Back to the Future. If you've not seen it, go and watch it. Watch it now. So that's my benchmark of a film that you can recommend without reservation to absolutely anyone. And so I don't give many 5s at all on this. So it's a high watermark to give. Even Star Wars I wouldn't give a 5 to people. So repeat viewing score. Linton.
I would give this a 5 in the sense that if you've watched it once and you've spent that time investing in it and you enjoyed it, do watch it again, because there's just so much nuanced cinematography in it that I think is so beautiful.
Bertie.
4.5. I think you can get an amazing first viewing out of this that will just rock your world. But actually, having watched it probably, I don't know how many, maybe 3 times now, I get something amazing from it every time and more. Like, I was much more aware of those long single shot scenes, not kind of one-ers that classic, like super kind of moving one-ers that are super choreographed or anything, but those beautiful, just like portraits that are allowed to play out. Those kind of things that you get on a second or third viewing.
Helen.
Yeah, I just really couldn't watch Armie Hammer this time round. And it's really bad. Like, I really enjoyed watching it the first time, and this time round, I just couldn't get past him. So I'm going to give it 3.5 for repeat viewing. Maybe I could just like watch
That's
it.
The thing, that's what
fast forward him and not watch him and just watch the other bits.
Can I interject with something? Do you think what's the whole Armie Hammer thing going on at the moment has blighted your viewing of him?
Yeah. And I just watch it and I'm just a bit...
You can't get past who he is now.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I just wish it'd been someone else. Or
I have a similar kind of thing with Armie Hammer, but I was like, when I was watching this, I was like, oh man, it's almost a waste, because he's really, I think he's amazing in this. I think this is his best performance. We've had Social Network as well, which is, he plays another handsome guy twice. But when I was watching, it's just like, oh man, dude, it's a shame. It's a shame. But it didn't distract from the film. I was kind of like, you did a stellar job in this. Repeat viewing score. This is my second time watching it, and I won't watch it that often, but it needs to be rewatched. So it's going to be a 4.5. Small screen score. I think this, for me, this is where it's going to lose some points. But Linton.
I think it works nicely on the telly. I didn't think I needed to go and watch it in the cinema. It's not like you get big expansive shots, and it's not like there's a lot going on in any one shot. You know, you've never really ever got more than about 5 or 6 characters on screen at any one time. So I think does that mean it gets a smaller score?
No, if you feel it works better, if you feel it works super fine on the TV, or then it gets a higher score.
Yeah, no, I think it works fine on the TV. So let's say 4.5 for that.
Bertie.
Yeah, I agree. Interestingly, I think there is some stunning scenery, and I know I've given previous films that we've reviewed bigger scores for like big, but the epicness, the classicness of this movie is not in its bigness and its scope; it's in its intimacy, and therefore. It's a 4 for me. But there's some beautiful scenery that I'd love to be enveloped by that sound and that solo piano in a cinema.
Yeah.
I'm just a big advocate of cinema, guys. Let's go to the cinema more often. But 4.
Helen.
Yeah, I really enjoyed seeing this at the cinema. The Prince Charles did a double showing of this, and the Talking Heads stopped making sense. And I just had like so much fun going to see both of them. And I just really enjoyed watching this big, and this will lead into my engagement score as well. But I didn't think I was going to find much of a difference between watching it on the big screen and on the little screen, but I did. So I'm going to give it a 4. I think if you've seen it before, watching it on the small screen is probably not going to be that much of a difference to you. But for me, I definitely enjoyed it more on the big screen. So 4.
Yeah, I'm going to go 3.5 here. Like I said, the first time I watched it was in the cinema. Second time was on my iPad and flit it between my TV as well. But if next time I watch it, I'd want to watch it on the big screen, I think, to get both the story in there and both the vistas. And I like the way you talk about the portrait playing out, Bertie. I think that's a nice way to kind of phrase those long shots. So 3.5. Engagement score. Linton.
Remind me what the engagement score is for, how engaged I was.
Yeah, how engaged you were. Were you checking your phone? Did you feel the need? Were you checking IMDb?
A solid 4.5 here.
Bertie?
I'm going to go 4.8. Ooh. As I was trying not to be engaged when I was watching this
sucked you in
last night at midnight, and then just got engaged.
Helen?
God, I was terrible. I was on my phone quite a lot during this, and I think it's got kind of like that slightly dreamy quality of like being on holiday and you're kind of like don't have much to do. You can just kind of like sit around looking at beautiful things, and then something happens and you pay attention, and then you go and have some sexy time with a peach, and then something happens for a bit, and then you go and dance to a bit of the psychedelic furs, and then there's like a sleepy bit. And yeah, I got sucked in. So like, it could have had Shia LaBeouf in this. That was one of the original names turning around. So yeah, I got kind of like sucked into IMDb trivia, which means I can't give it ultimate high engagement. So a 4.
I mean, still decent. Yeah, I'm going to go for 4. I was kind of willing myself. I was kind of, I want to get to that Michael Stuhlbarg speech. I was looking forward to that again in context. But again, I was like, picking up the pieces that I'd missed in the first sitting. And again, I think sometimes when you're watching films as part of a festival, I don't know if that's a 4th or 5th film I've seen, and you're just a bit tired and you're kind of in a nice warm comfy place, and you maybe I drifted off. But I was certainly I think I was more engaged this time than was the first time. That gives us an overall score of 4.350000.
That's pretty high.
Yeah, pretty decent score. Yeah, decent score there. To everyone who's listening to us, do follow us on Twitter. We are at FlixWatcherPod, as well as telling you what's going on general stuff on Netflix in the UK. We do put a shout out before we go to record and put a tweet out like this. We're reviewing Call Me By Your Name with Linton Stephens from BBCRadio3's Classical Fix, and Bertie from hashtag Bert and Bertie. Have you seen it? Tells your thoughts and you score out 5 stars for an on-air shout-out on Fixwatcher. Normally, I mean, we put this out for every film. Some films don't get a response, especially if they're new or not that well seen. This isn't that well seen, but this is by far and away our largest response. It's definitely one of our largest responses. So we can't read them all out, but I'll ask you guys to read out 2 of your favourites each, if that's all right. I want to scroll down the feed and check them out. So apologies, I can't read all of them out, but there just isn't enough time. Linton, do you want to take one?
Yeah. So I've got Stevie B733 who says, started a fan account on Twitter because of Timothée Chalamet's portrayal of Elio. So he gave it 5 stars. And then Elena says, a real masterpiece, aesthetics in every frame and every sound. And that was 5 out of 5 as well.
Bertie?
Looking at Truth Seeker, which is a great name. 5 years and many watches later, I'm still obsessed with it. It's not just the romance, it's the family, the nostalgia, the immersive environment, the lack of villains, the silences, and most importantly, the exquisite acting from the 2 leads. Luca is a genius. So I think that just encapsulates a lot of what we were saying. I love the lack of villains.
Exactly.
It's such a brilliant shout.
Do you want to take another one, Bertie, before we go to Helen?
A beautiful, poetic film, great performances by Hammer and Chalamet, best film ever, June. June 2023 is the name.
And Helen, come from yourself.
So this one is from always_never, 5 stars. This masterpiece made me fall in love with life again. It reminded me in a visceral way of all that is beautiful in the world. It was not like watching a movie, but like being there with them in somewhere in northern Italy in the 80s. 4 years later, I'm still there.
I do love that intro, somewhere in northern Italy. And you're in. One more for yourself, Helen?
One of the most beautiful, sensual, tender and heartbreaking films I've ever seen. The way the film is shot is so voyeuristic. That It's like you're seeing it with your own eyes. Hammer and Chalamet are incredible in it and have extraordinary chemistry. A masterpiece, 5 stars.
A lot of people like this. Thank you very much, guys, for reading messages. Apologies, we're not going to read them all out. There's one person who talks about the sequel. I think it was a sequel muted. I'm not sure if this is before. I think this is before Armie Hammer instances. I don't think it needed a sequel in respect to this. For me, this seems like a nice contained film, and I really like the way it ended with that sounds harsh, with Elio's crying face, but I think that was a nice way to end the film.
You know,
if there were a
be
sequel
fine,
which is just he's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Or if the sequel were just another 90 minutes, 2 hours of him crying, maybe that would be fine.
Why not? Luca can do anything. Let him have it. Yeah, Bertie and Linton, can you tell everyone we can find you, your work, and we'll say goodbye to all the listeners.
Sure, you can find me on BBC's Classical Fix podcast, which you can get on BBC Sounds or on wherever you get your podcasts. And you can find me on socials. I'm at Linton Stephens on Twitter and Instagram at Linstagram, or my illustration Instagram is insta_sketcher.
Did you ever do an Instagram with this? Because you did an illustration of Schitt's Creek, which one of our mutual friends, Gareth from our quiz team, bought from you. But did you ever do a Call Me By Your Name?
I didn't do a Call Me By Your Name, but I tell you what, I'll put it on the list, Kobe.
Let us know when you do, and we'll share it with people 100%. Bertie, where can we find you?
On Instagram, we're Bertie Directors. That's kind of about it. If you want to check out Hawkeye on Disney Plus. We've got The Great on Hulu, Our Flag Means Death, HBO, and some stuff coming out on Apple soon. And maybe keep watching Disney next year, because there's possibly a big movie that we're directing, which wouldn't be for another 2 years.
It sounds like you need to have a project on Netflix. You've got all the other streaming net platforms.
Oh, there's one in the works. Don't you worry.
Is there?
Yeah.
Heard it here first.
Yeah, you'll
Fantastic.
hear about that. Yeah, maybe you guys can review it.
We'd love
Absolutely.
to.
Well,
yeah.
absolutely. We'd love to review it. Thank you so much, guys, for coming and talking about Calling By Your Name. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for coming on.
It's a pleasure.
Bye.
Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty tunes, and Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Ben, and that's Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.